How are we doing now?
That's max.
That's max. Probably is like, well,
That's all you get.
Okay, I've got mine turned up too, so.
well, welcome. Again, I'm overwhelmed with the turnout. We set for about 48 people, and I think by the time we get a count, it's going to be way more than that. So, welcome. I want to do some introductions first. Lee Liker, where you at, Lee? Mayor of Colby, go ahead and stand up, please. Ron Alexander, City Manager. Mike Wolfter, Colby Investment Group. Jason Wolfter, Colby Investment Group. Quinlan Carpenter, same thing, Colby Investment Group. Quaid, in back there. And my name is Jim Millenseffer. I work for Chance Management, which is one of Mike's company. So I want to welcome you tonight. We've got a presentation that'll take maybe 15 or 20 minutes. It could take longer if you have questions. I'll encourage you to go ahead and ask questions as we go. Don't wait till the end. If you've got something that you want to know about, please just raise your hand and we'll be happy to answer your question. I'd also like to encourage the folks that I introduced to interject, please, whether it's Ron and Lee from the city standpoint, or whether it's Mike and his group with Colby Investment Group. Please feel free to ask them a question as well if it's something that's specifically related to the city. I think that we're all pretty comfortable in making the answers to your questions. So feel free to ask as we go. We're going to start with a little presentation. This is about 3.5 minutes. This is on the Department of Commerce's website, and it's an explanation of star bonds, which is kind of the premise of this entire project. It's the basis or the heart of this entire project. So I'd like to show this little video first, and then we'll either answer questions or move on with the presentation after the video. All right?
Here are some frequently asked questions regarding the Kansas Star Bonds program. Sales tax and revenue bonds, more commonly known as star bonds, were established by the Kansas legislature in 1999 as a financial tool for cities and counties to aid in the development of major commercial, entertainment, and tourism areas or attractions. Bonds are a financial tool used by municipalities to help raise capital for major projects. The bonds are purchased by private investors, allowing the municipality to raise needed funds without increasing the taxes of its citizens. As the Star Bond project attracts new visitors and generates sales, the tax revenue generated from the new visitors is used to pay off the bonds. You can contribute on the success of the program. Kansas residents have a chance to comment on proposed projects during public meetings. A city or county partners with the developer and identifies a potential Star Bond eligible project that can generate enough sales tax revenue to pay for the bonds. Star Bond financing must be less than 50% of the total project costs. Kansas Department of Commerce validates that there is enough capital investment, then determines whether the proposed district is Star Bond eligible and whether enough visitors will be attracted. Commerce then approves the project plan and determines the maximum amount of Star Bonds that can be issued. Smaller rural communities have lower investment thresholds and more flexibility than large city projects. The city or county provides a summary of community support and issues the bonds, creating a debt reserve fund for instances when the sales tax revenues are not high enough to make the payments. Investors can then purchase the bonds. The bonds must be paid off within 20 years. Taxpayers are never on the hook for the bond payments. To be considered for Star Bonds, a proposed project must be characterized as a statewide regional destination, include high-quality entertainment and tourism attractions, and improve the quality of life for the community and region. The project must contain unique features and increase out-of-state tourism, generate significant positive and diverse economic impacts, and be capable of sustainable development over time. Proposed projects' benefits must exceed public costs. A Star Bond district is a defined geographical area where the new sales tax revenue will be generated that pays off the bonds. Boundaries are drawn to include the attraction and adjacent revenue-generating businesses. Base revenue of the district is determined, and existing sales tax revenue continues to go to the state general fund. Sales tax revenue generated above and beyond the base revenue is tracked. The revenue generated from the new visitors is used to pay off the bonds. There are currently 16 Star Bond projects at various stages of completion and repayment throughout the state of Kansas. Star bonds are an important tool that allows local communities to attract new visitors and new revenues to Kansas, while improving the local quality of life for Kansas residents. For more information about the Star Bonds program, visit kansascommerce.gov.
So that's a pretty basic introduction to what star bonds are. And as I shared with you a few minutes ago, the star bond concept is really the heart of this project. If it weren't for this economic tool, we wouldn't be able to do something like this. The arena that we're talking about constructing and the events that we're talking about hosting are typically at venues that have been created and are owned and operated by counties or cities. If you go to Nebraska, to the state fair, they've got a beautiful facility. It's not owned by any private entity. If you go up to McCook, they've got a nice facility. We've got some rodeo folks, friends of ours that are here. Ray, you travel all over the country to participate. Would you suggest that the majority of the venues that you go to are publicly owned and operated?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so the gist of it is, in order to be able to create a project like this, you're either going to have your county or your municipality build it and operate it, or you're going to have to utilize the economic tools that the state has created that help you as private operators and private developers create these projects and pay for them. That's the heart of the project. Now there's some other stuff that's going to be involved in terms of this process, but without the star bond, we wouldn't have an opportunity to do it. In the video, it talked about a district. If you look at the maps that are on the television screens now, you can see the red outline of the district that we've proposed to the city and the city's agreed upon, and this is what we're going to move forward on. Quite a bit of property, both south and north of Interstate 70. The heart of it, though, is the 65 acres that's to the south and west of KS 25 and Interstate 70. Used to be owned by Zadro, and it's now owned by the Colby Investment Group. That's basically where the project is going to be. But when we get into conversations about the district and the incremental or additional extra sales tax that's going to be generated by the transient or visitor guests that come, it's within this red boundary. So we're not talking about north of Colby, we're not talking on the far east side, we're talking about this central area around the intersection of I-70 and KS 25. Now the yellow outlines show you the actual specific developments that we're proposing in this project. So everything that's being done from a construction standpoint is south of the interstate, with the exception of the existing Holiday Inn Express. So as part of this project, and we're going to go through it here in a minute, phase 1 and phase 2, as part of this project, we'll be constructing new facilities, and we're also going to be re-imaging or renovating some existing properties. So the yellow represents phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1, multi-purpose arena and equestrian center. In addition, around the actual center, RV park, outdoor food service, greenbelt, fishing pond, walking trails, new full-service restaurant, 3 new hotels, re-imaging our existing hotels, and then the travel center and city limits convention center renovations. So let's talk about the multi-purpose arena. Again, the center of this project. Mike and I traveled in the last 3 years. We've been through Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska. We visited a variety of arenas and facilities that host equestrian rodeo type events. So the intent is to create a facility that will be able to host any of those disciplines. I call them the rodeo disciplines. When I was young growing up, we'd go to the rodeo. I grew up in Denver, and we'd go to the National Western Stock Show. So you'd go to the rodeo, and it'd be about 2 hours. And you'd see 4 or 5 barrel racers, and then you'd see a couple of bareback riders, and then you'd see a couple of bull riders. So you would see all of the disciplines of a rodeo, but you'd only see 3 or 4 competitors. What we learned, or what I learned through this process, is every one of those rodeo disciplines has their own organizations, their own groups. And while they do participate in rodeos a lot, what they mostly do is compete as a group. So again, my buddy Ray Holzmeister, my neighbor Ray, he's a team roper. So he will go to events that mostly just have team ropers. And they could be an event for 3 or 4 days, and there might be 500 entries. I've got a buddy that's into barrel racing. He has 3 different barrel racing teams that go out through the country every weekend. His teams participate 4 to 5 days. So our objective is not just to try to attract rodeos, but more important, we want to attract a couple of significant barrel racing events a year. We want to attract a couple team roping, a couple cutting, a couple bronc riding. If we can attract those events where they're here for 3, 4, 5 days, and all they're doing is that, we're going to be very, very successful. Absolutely, we'll host some rodeos where all of the events, but the objective of the center is to be able to do all of the rodeo disciplines, to have all of the infrastructure, whether it's the gates or the, all of the stuff that's necessary to do all of the different rodeo disciplines. That's our objective. The second thing about the arena is everything else that it can house, right? Everything else that it can do. Cheyenne built a new facility, and the first cattle show that they hosted had 3,000 head of cattle, and they were there for 10 days. Huge cattle show. So we're interested in not just equestrian events, but we're interested in promoting dog shows, swine shows, llama, chickens, any of the animals. We're interested in promoting Colby, which is at the center of I-70 and US 83, right? We're in a great place geographically. If you look at Colby on the map, we're in a great place geographically. It's easy to get here from the north, it's easy to get here from the south, from the east, from the west. So we're going to be promoting dog shows and anything else that can be done on dirt, under a roof. That's our objective. We're not going to have hardwood floors in the basketball court. We got a beautiful facility already for that. But if it can be done on dirt, under a roof, that's what we're going to build. How many square feet, Mike?
It's about 300,000 square foot total.
300,000 square feet under a roof. There'll be 2 indoor arenas, 160 by 300 feet. A little bit bigger than that.
40 by 3 something.
There'll be a stall for horses where we'll be able to house 400 horses under a roof. One of the things we learned as we traveled to these places was it's not just having an arena, it's having the infrastructure for the people that are participating. So you've got folks that drive in with a beautiful rig, fifth wheel. They've got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of horses that they're hauling. Well, they're not going to let them sit in the rig, right, for 3 days. So they rent a stall that's inside. So we're going to have stalls, a minimum of 400 inside, to be able to house the horses. When we first started talking about this, one of the concerns that I had was, well, how do you take care of these people, right? If you have 1,000 people that come to our community for 3 or 4 days, how are you going to take care of them? We did a great job as a community hosting the 1A basketball tournament last March. We did a great job as a community hosting the basketball tournament back in the end of June or beginning of July. But what we discovered during that process was we don't have enough lodging, we don't have enough restaurants, and we don't have other stuff for people to do while they're in our community. That's what they told us. That's what the visitors told us. So in addition to building the arena, our intent is to take the acreage and add an RV park, 142 slots, right? All the electric to hook up. There'll be a fishing pond. Since we don't have enough restaurants yet, we're going to create I call it a food truck food court. We're going to create a pad area with all of the water and electric hookups for food trucks to be able to park, 6 to 8 food trucks to be able to park. And when we host events that have, 1,000 people here for 3 or 4 days, we're not gonna have any trouble getting the food trucks to come in and set up. We're gonna have a picnic area, greenbelt, etc. So amenities to take care of the guests at the actual facility. Lodging. Everybody has seen the 2 new hotels under construction now, right? Right? We got the Comfort Inn is totally wrapped. I heard that probably within the next 30 days we'll have the outside completely done. Beautiful facility. I also think that the Holiday Inn Express, probably within a month, we'll have all 4 stories framed. Is that fair? Quaid, is that fair? Okay, so we've got 2 great new hotels that are going to add about 175 rooms to the area. We're also committing to another new hotel. And when you look at the drawings that we put up, the 3rd hotel is included. We don't have a brand yet. We haven't decided whether it's going to be, what type of brand it'll be. And in fact, we're hoping that there'll be other folks that are interested from a development standpoint that come in and want to build the hotel. We're going to have 4 hotels already. We don't necessarily need to be building and operating any additional hotels. So part of our plan in this process is additional developers coming in and participating in this process. So today, the Comfort Inn, beautiful hotel right off the interstate. Holiday Inn Express will also be done by the end of the first quarter of next year. When those 2 hotels are open, then there's going to be a rebranding of the existing hotels. So the Comfort Inn today will become a Quality Inn, and the existing Holiday Inn Express will become a La Quinta. So we'll have 4 different branded hotels in the area with an additional 5th hotel coming. I talked about some of the other business renovations. So everybody's been to the Oasis, everybody's been to the truck stop. And about 5 years ago, Mike and Jason started a project by adding restrooms. And if you had ever been in there during a summer weekend or on a holiday, it was tough. It was tough. There were lines of people. So the restrooms were the first part of really being able to take care of more guests. The second issue that the truck stop has is we don't have enough fueling capacity. We've only got 6 pumps, which means we can take care of 12 vehicles at a time. So in the next year or less, you're going to see a renovation in the fueling, and we're going to double the amount of pumps that we have. We're going to go from 6 pumps to 12 pumps. We're adding new high-speed blender pumps. So instead of taking care of 12 vehicles, we're now going to be able to take care of 24 vehicles. Speed up that process. So part of this project is the renovation of the travel center from a fueling standpoint. Starbucks is going to get a drive-through. There's going to be a new entrance to the truck stop, and Starbucks is going to get a drive-through. And then probably one of the things that I think will impact, especially the transient guest, and by the way, when I say transient guests, I'm talking about those visitors, and they're the ones whose taxes are going to pay for the project. We're going to add a grab-and-go kitchen into the travel center. So there's some really good grab-and-go places out in the interstate. Where's Jason? Quick Trip. Who else?
Quick Trip, Loves has really kind of got in the game, C-store-wise. Quick Trip's probably the biggest.
Okay, so I'm sure many of you have experienced Quick Trip while you're traveling. Our objective in the kitchen at the truck stop is going to be to have a separate area that isn't a branded restaurant, right? We've got Qdoba, we've got City Walk, we've got Starbucks, but we're going to add a kitchen, and we're going to be able to do more grab-and-go, fresh, higher quality, better for you products, and then have them for sale in the C-store. So the major renovations for the travel center, the new entrance, the Starbucks drive-through, twice the gas dispensing, and then the grab-and-go kitchen and display areas. As far as the convention center and city limits go, Chef Keith does a great job at city limits, and so does Dana at the convention center. But if Dana's got 300 or 400 people in a banquet in the convention center, Chef Keith knows he's going to be slow. because guests see all of the cars in the parking lot and they assume that the restaurant's gonna be too busy to get into. We also don't have enough storage and some other back of the house type stuff in the restaurants to be able to continue to take care of more guests. And I continue to talk about this transient guest, right? If we're gonna bring potentially 100,000 people annually, that's what the preliminary feasibility talked about, is 100,000 people annually to our community. If we're gonna do that over a course of a year, we're gonna have to be able to do a better job of taking care of people in a quicker fashion and being able to have more parking. So part of the renovation that you're gonna see at the convention center and the city limits is there'll be a new entrance and a new parking area for the convention center. The entrance will be basically on the west side of the building, in between the hotel and the existing convention center, kind of, you know where the big flag is, kind of right in that general area. And there'll be additional parking on the south side as well. So we're gonna kind of separate the entrances, and we're gonna separate the parking and try to create an environment where it's easier for people to get into the restaurant, it's easier for people to get into the convention center, and people don't make a decision based on thinking that it's too crowded. Those are the major business renovations. That was phase one. I'll be happy to talk about schedules as we get to the end, but in terms of a project like this, you do it in a couple different phases. What I just described, the arena, the amenities, the 3 new hotels, the renovations of the existing hotels, and the renovations of the truck stop, that's all phase one. Phase two includes the indoor amusement center, indoor go-karts, putt-putt, laser tag, arcade, miniature petting zoo, wind, weather, and tornado exhibit, farming pavilion and ag center, and then more opportunity for retail and restaurant. So the first part is indoor amusement, and I want to take a minute to caution everybody. This is not an exact rendering of what we're going to do. We're not exactly sure that these buildings will be exactly where they're at, right? We're pretty sure, not pretty sure, we're positive where the arena is going to be, and we're pretty, confident about the size. So it's going to be on the west side of the land. But in terms of these other phase two stuff, I'm going to caution you, as you see pictures or as you see drawings, please understand it's just an illustration, right? We don't have renderings of what our indoor amusement is going to be. But what we do know is what we want it to have in it, right? Because again, we go back to what the people told us when they visited our community. It was great that we hosted the basketball tournament, but if they played at 10 o'clock on Friday and they don't have another game until 2 o'clock on Saturday, what are they going to do between 10 and 2? What are we going to offer them? Where can we generate some revenue, create some excitement, not just for the transient guests that are here for a purpose, but also the folks that travel up and down Interstate 70? What can we do to encourage more of those people to stop and spend more time in Colby? So we know that we're going to have an indoor amusement center, and we know that it's going to include putt-putt, we know it's going to include go-karts, arcade, etc. Don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We've done some preliminary research with companies that build these things. I'm not thinking we're going to build a Dave & Buster's, if you're familiar with that. But I think we're going to create something that's going to be a lot of fun, not just for the transient guests that are here on a layover, but also for our community, right? For the folks that already live here. Something for them to do. Wind, weather, and tornado exhibit. Mike and I were in Chicago at a convention a few years ago, and we went to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, a wonderful place. If you're ever in Chicago, you should go there. And while we were in there, we saw the tornado machine, an amazing attraction. And it really was the foundation of deciding that we wanted to do something that was a part of our community, right? I moved here 16 years ago. I've watched the weather 1,000 times more in the last 16 years than I did in the first 48 years of my life. I get up every morning and wait till the weather comes on. I watch it at night. I mean, I'm always interested in what, you know, are we gonna get rain? We're supposed to get a storm tonight, I'm hoping, right? We want to take what Kansas, especially Western Kansas is, and be able to identify and show it. This is not a Wizard of Oz Dorothy thing with a tornado. This is an educational, interactive, something for adults and kids. And that's our objective. We'd be remiss if we didn't look at our roots, right? And so ranching and farming is really what Western Kansas is all about. So the other idea is to create, again, an interactive, educational, hands-on facility that centers around farming, ag, etc. We want to create something, we don't want to compete. We have a wonderful museum, and our intention isn't to try to build a new museum. Our intention is to build a interactive, hands-on, educational thing that centers around farming and ag and ranching. Additional restaurants and retail. So again, don't hold us to the exact design, but you can take this one to the bank. We have a hotel under construction here, we have a hotel under construction here. When we're done, we'll have 1, 2, 3 additional pad sites at that area, and we also have the Village Inn. So basically we have 4 areas for future restaurant, future development. We also have significant area on the other side where the arena is for future development. I said 100,000 people earlier, right? That's a lot of people. I don't know that 5 hotels is enough. I guarantee you that we're going to need another half dozen restaurants. And the restaurants that are here, by the way, are going to do great as a result. I talked to the folks at 24/7, so we're in competition with 24/7, right? But Mark Augustine, I know him pretty well. Mark is crazy excited about what we're doing because he knows the impact it'll have on 24/7. It'll have the same impact on the other truck stop in town, right? I believe it's going to have the same impact from Oakley all the way to Goodland. As people are coming in on the interstate from the west or interstate from the east or coming up from 83 from the south or from the north, they're going to stop in Atwood, right? They're going to stop in Oakley. They're going to stop in Goodland, and that's great for Northwest Kansas. This isn't just a Colby or a Thomas County project. This is a project for all of Northwest Kansas. Plenty of additional development space. All right, now we get talking about the specifics. We're literally talking somewhere between $80 and $90 million. That's our best guess at this point in time. $80 to $90 million. You heard earlier in the presentation that came from the Department of Commerce that potentially the STAR bond could equate to 50% of that. The state's never given 50%. Right? A lot of times it's 20, 25, 30%. And the state's going to go through the due diligence and the formal feasibility study to really determine what they believe the project is valued at. You heard them say that the cost can't outweigh the benefits to the community. But there are also other programs that are created to build commerce. Transient guest tax, that's the bed tax, IRBs, industrial revenue bonds, TIF districts, CID. These are all tools that are created to support economic development. I was at a county commissioners meeting a couple weeks ago, the open meeting, and unfortunately they're talking about having to shut down the city dump or the county dump on Sundays, at least for part of the year. Why do you think that is? Part of it's health, part of it's cost, right? Part of it's cost. Well, when cities operate, and I'll let Ron jump in if he wants, but when cities operate, they know that just like everything else, expenses are going to go up. Whether it's labor expenses, whether it's materials, whether it's replacement of equipment, costs are going to go up. So if you're operating a county, or if you're operating a city, you really only have a couple options. 3 to be exact. You can cut services, right? And that's unfortunately what the county's going to do when they get rid of the city dump on Sundays for part of the year. You can reduce services. You can raise taxes, right? You can raise property taxes. You can get more money to pay for the stuff that you have to. Or you can raise the tax base. Raise the tax base. So what we're recommending and suggesting is the way to position Colby for the next 15 to 20 years is to help raise the tax base. What can we do to bring in more sales tax from outside the community? Where are we at this month on the, what's the terminology for sales tax coming from outside the community? The pull factor.
Pull factor.
Where did we rank this month on the pull
I
factor?
don't know month to month, but I know in 2021 and 2022, we were the second highest in the state. That means of all the municipalities across the state, there's only one other community that brings people into the state to spend money than Colby, Kansas. I think 23, we dropped down to 3rd on the list.
So we're in the top 2 or 3 from a pull factor standpoint. If you didn't hear what Ron said, it basically means if you look at the pool of money from a sales tax standpoint, how much of that is coming from people outside the community? And obviously that's what we want, right? Now, you would think that we're an advantage. We've got Interstate 70. We've got 25,000 vehicles a day that are going to and from the mountain states that pass through here. And one of the reasons that we rank in the top 2 or 3 from a pull factor year after year in the state of Kansas is because people stop. So what can we do to increase that? What can we do to build on that? What can we do to take the success that we already have proven that we have and make that better? Well, we have more stuff, right? We have more reasons for people to stop. We have a destination for people to come to. We have a place for people to stop. How many people, can you tell when the college rodeo is here in the summer? Can you raise your hand if you know when it happens? Okay, and why do you know when it happens? Pardon me? Trailers everywhere, traffic, right? So, Vanderbilt's, very successful business, right? The manager of Vanderbilt's told Mike one day, I'll let my employees have Christmas off, I'll let them have their birthday off, I'll let them have Easter off, but they can't be off during the college rodeo, right? They can't be off that weekend. I asked Mike Coates one time, do you sell more trucks during the college rodeo? And he said, absolutely. So we have the ability to not just pull more people off the interstate for a short period of time, but we have the ability to bring 100,000 people here annually that are going to spend money at Vanderbilt's, they're going to spend money at Mike Tubbs' dealership, that are going to stay in our hotels, that are going to eat at Linda Taylor's restaurants, right? That's the objective. What can we do to bring more folks in? We talked about, let's just suggest that it's a 50-50 deal. Let's just suggest through the state we can get 50% of that through the established programs. Well, that still means that the developers are going to be on the hook for $45 to $50 million. Our objective is not to do that all ourselves. We absolutely are hoping to have other local developers. If we're going to build a 5th hotel, we would love to have another operator take a piece of land that we've established and be the owner and operator of another hotel. We would like other folks to open restaurants. We'd like Vanderbilt's. I got this crazy idea in the back of my head. Again, I grew up in Denver, and we had a huge Western wear. I can't remember the name of it. Sheplers. Okay, so I grew up in Denver in Sheplers, right on I-25 in South Denver. Well, I can see that in our facility, having a store that's as big as a Sheplers would be amazing, right? Ray, would that be good if you're traveling to have a Sheplers right there by the arena?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'd love to see Vanderbilt say, gosh, our store is too small. We're going to take a retail space over by the arena. Not only would that create more commerce there, but it also might open up the real estate where Vanderbilt's is for a business that might need a little bit smaller facility. So we have a terrific opportunity to attract that type of stuff through other developers, new operators. Again, we don't want to own and operate all this stuff. Jason, do you want to operate all the hotels and restaurants? Penny? Are you sure? Okay. So absolutely, our objective is to recruit more developers. And I promise you, as we build momentum, the state's going to do the formal feasibility study. And when that's completed, the Secretary of Commerce, the Lieutenant Governor, David Tolan, is going to say, this is a great idea, let's move forward. When that happens, it's going to hit the news. And I promise you, developers that don't necessarily have an interest in Colby today are going to be interested. And by the way, we're building a $130 million hospital. We've got new people coming in. There's a lot of stuff going on in Colby that's going to create more and more interest. So bringing new developers in, money from the outside, money that's not here already. If we could build a fifth hotel and have somebody bring $10 million in from outside Colby and invest it in our fifth hotel here, is that good for the community, Ron? So here's how the Star Bond process works. Talked about it in the video, but I'm going to give you a quick education. I use the word incremental. That just basically means new or additional. New or additional, incremental. So once the district is established, the state does a 12-month look back. And they look at the sales tax that was collected in the district for that 12 months. And forever, that sales tax, whether it's city sales tax, county sales tax, or state sales tax, goes to the city, the state, or the county. So just for argument's sake, let's say that the 12-month look back was $1 million in sales tax. Well, from then on, the first $1 million goes to the city and to the state and to the county. It's everything above that $1 million in the district that's utilized to pay off the Star bonds. So the state sales tax is 6.5%. We'll be able to retain 5.85% after the base is met to pay off the Star bonds. County sales tax. County collects 1.75. 0.8225 of that goes to the city. Well, the city's got to have some skin in this game too, right? So the city has agreed in our memorandum of understanding to let us utilize, the developers utilize the 0.8225, their portion of the county, to pay off the bonds. City sales tax is 0.75%, that's not going to get touched. So whether it's the base or all that additional, incremental, extra, that goes to the city. The objective is to get the bonds paid off. Because once the bonds are paid off, then guess what happens? The city gets their 6.5, or excuse me, the state gets their 6.5, the county gets the 1.75, but the city gets the 0.8225 again, and the city continues to do their 0.75. So the intent of the tool is to create a system where the city can remain as whole as possible and actually still benefit, right? Because even in that district, even in that red outline that we showed you, they're gonna get the 0.75 no matter what, right? So they get the base and the new stuff. But the city and the county and the state is also gonna continue to get the taxes outside the district. So the businesses that are outside that red line that we showed, those taxes just go where they normally go. Even if it's part of the 100,000 people that are coming, right? Linda, if they eat at your pizza place on 4th, all right, those sales taxes are gonna go to the city and the county and the state. That's not in the district, so it's not included. So the idea is to create an environment where we bring a lot of people in, we do a really good job of selling them stuff or giving them opportunities to do things while they're here, and then we use those incremental, additional, extra sales tax dollars to pay off the bonds. That way, the county doesn't have to own the facility, or doesn't have to build it, or the city doesn't, right? If you were to go to Gillette, Wyoming, crazy successful, right? They host they're working with the National High School Rodeo Association to try to host that event for 10 years. $10 million annually comes into that community based on that event. Well, the county owns the facility, and they're talking about putting $30 million into renovating it and bringing it up to a higher level, but they want the High School Rodeo Association to commit to letting them host for 10 years. So whether it's Gillette, and I could give you another half dozen counties, these communities in those areas have figured out that it makes sense to have the county build it, to have the county own it, to have the county run it, and it benefits everybody, and they're good with that. We came up with an alternative. We came up with a way to leverage or utilize tools that are created and developed to help businesses and to build commerce and to build that tax base that we talked about, and have it not fall on anybody in the local community. That's the beauty. I would like to thank you, and I'm willing, and I know Ron is, and Mike, and Jason, and Lee. What questions do you have about the project? What questions do you have? And please, feel free.
Well, I guess, where do you expect the people to come from to work all of these? And my second question would be, is there an increase in the tax in the Starbond district over the rest of the city of Colby?
Okay, so two questions. The first question was, where are you going to get the people to work? Well, that's a great question, right? I'm a firm believer that you got to take steps. And the first step is, we don't have enough housing in this community. But guess what? We're working on that. Mike, how many duplex? 18 units that are going to be over by, across from Walmart. Ron, you guys have worked an arrangement. Do you have any, can you talk about that yet?
We've got an initial RFP for a proposal for an apartment, townhome type facility where the old community building was that we just received back, and we'll start addressing that on August 20th. We're looking at anywhere from 30 to 40 living units out of that facility. You think of the banner homes that are being built. There's 30 lots there. I believe 14 of the 30 are sold. Most of those people moving into and building homes there are moving out of homes already in this community, freeing up a lower moderate price home for a different home. We continue to chip away at that every day because we need the housing.
Here's what I can promise you. We are going to see a change in this country in terms of our labor force. We are going to see more people looking for work in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. I guarantee it. It has to happen from an economic standpoint. We're going to see more people leave cities and go to rural areas. And the rural areas that are prepared and are ready are gonna win. The areas that have worked on creating more low to moderate income housing, the areas that have created more multi-unit housing, the areas that have embraced the idea of 30 beautiful lots, knowing that every time somebody builds one and moves into it, they sold their house to somebody else, that person moved out of something to go in there, and now somebody moves into that. I mean, there is a domino effect, right? There may be 3 or 4 different moves for one person building and moving into a new home. So if we as a community embrace the idea of fixing our housing shortage and aggressively working on it now, which I believe we are, 2, 3, 4 years from now, when we need more employees, you're gonna see them coming. I firmly believe that.
We lose more employees of somebody coming in and applying for a job because there's no housing. So the housing is a big deal. We've had a fair amount of applicants who come and they can't find a place to live. We have ourselves, not only want to be a rental building, but we've bought several houses. I know even McCarty's, I talked to them, they buy a lot of property because that's the only way they can get somebody to come to work, they can get them a house. So, but if you have to come, you can't find any place to live as, you just lose out on, and some quality people, So the housing deal is.
We gotta fix the housing first.
It's a big deal.
We gotta fix the housing
And the other
first.
thing is, a couple people lose their deal, lose coming because they want something to do with lifestyle change, so.
Yeah, if you remember the video that the state put on, it wasn't just creating stuff for the transient guests, the traveling guests. It was also improving the lifestyle of the people that already live there. So I firmly believe that what we're suggesting is going to benefit the people that already live here, but it's also going to benefit when you're trying to recruit people because there's more for people to do. Let me answer the second part of your question. Remind me.
Is there a higher tax?
Got it. Thank
base, whatever
Thank you.
call it, in the Starbond district?
So in the Starbond district, there is not a higher tax base. But we are proposing, and we've been in conversations with the city, there'll be a second CID district that will only encompass the new businesses or the renovated businesses. And then, yes, we can add a point or two onto that to help pay it off. But it won't be the entire red district, it'll be a separate CID district. So, at the end of the day,
CID stands for what?
I'm sorry?
CID stands for what?
Community Improvement District. 24/7 used a CID as part of their development. And 2%. And I get it that, you know, if you spend a buck at Mocha's, that's an extra 2 cents, and you live in the community, and so you're helping Mocha, or you're helping 24/7. So we understand that, and people can make the decision to or not do business inside the CID district. But at the end of the day, our belief is that the sooner it gets paid off, that stuff goes away, and it's better for the entire community. Tuffy?
Go ahead.
Couple, 3 questions. What are you figuring your average base pay will be? That's question number 1. Number 2, how many people do you think it will employ? That was the 2 questions I have right now.
All right, so I did a 5-year pro forma on the arena, and I believe that we're
I'm
gonna.
talking about the whole
I-
thing. We're talking about the whole thing.
Right.
What do you figure the base pay is going to be for everybody?
The only reason I started with the arena is because I did that math, but I'll give you what I think for the entire area.
You're talking a lot of different positions to try and get it.
Yeah, but no, I'm comfortable answering this question. I'm guessing that there's probably 125 full-time hourly positions.
At what pay base average?
I would guess that some of them will be minimum wage, whatever that is at the time, all the way up to probably $24 or $25 an hour. I think that if you're paying someone hourly that's gonna work at the arena, that's going to be doing those types of activities, whether it's, you know, cleanup, participating in that process, that's gonna be a higher paid job than a housekeeper at one of the new hotels. And that's why it's difficult to give you an average. I would say that it's gonna be anywhere from minimum wage to $25 an hour.
Well, it's very important. You know, we've got all this, but if you're not paying enough and base pay enough today, can you live on base pay if you've got 4 kids?
Yeah, I don't know that tonight's the,
I mean, this big deal, and I got a guy sitting right here, we went through that deal with the cigarette lighter. That was what, 25 years ago?
Yeah.
We couldn't find anybody that would work for base. And we're no different, and we have it today. You gotta pay, and if we can't have people that can contribute back and buy instead of us having to pay them extra to be there to make this thing work, can you do that? Have you figured that? That's big. It takes money out of our pocket, coming from other directions. Yeah, it looks great, but you gotta have people.
The answer
and
to-
you gotta pay them.
the answer to your question is, obviously, we have to pay them. And obviously, we'll have to figure what the market rate is for the different jobs. And in order to be able to hire and retain people like we
And you
do at our.
haven't figured that out yet? And you've done all this and you have not figured that out?
Well, I started to tell you what we had figured out. I can tell you what we pay at our existing hotels, and we'll tell you that
Well,
that's
I know
what.
what you pay too. We got business.
Okay, all right.
Well, go ahead.
I appreciate your question.
These people you're bringing in here with the border still open, are they gonna speak English, or are we gonna get a bunch of mumbo jumbo?
The people that we're bringing in to,
Cross the border,
I didn't say anything about bringing people in across the board.
where in the hell you gonna find all the people to work?
Well, I think I explained that earlier, that I
Oh,
believe.
you didn't either.
Okay.
You just beat around the bush. There's another thing I wanna know. You put this high-priced facility in, is it gonna get so damn expensive that you can't participate in showing it?
No.
I show in a lot of big arenas, and I know what I'm talking about.
And if you show at arenas, when you go to one and it's too expensive, do you go back?
Oh, yeah, because where in the hell else am I gonna go?
Well, our objective is gonna be to compete and to do a good job promoting and providing an opportunity for all of those rodeo disciplines to have a place to come. That's gonna be our objective. In terms of the actual rates that are charged, I assume that we'll be competitive.
I'm not
Absolutely.
a green one, I've been raising horses for 40 years.
Yes, sir.
So by God, I'll tell you what, this business is expensive. It's not nickel and dime.
I agree that it's not nickel and dime, and the people that are not gonna be nickel and dime are the people that are coming here for it. And they spend lots of money, and that's our objective, is to figure out a way to leverage that.
I hope you get it figured out.
I appreciate it, and we'll look to you for advice. What else? Please.
What's your completion date of stage 1?
Completion date?
Yeah.
So, great question. We anticipate that everything goes smoothly, that we'll be done with the process and be able to sell bonds sometime in the second or early third quarter of next year. So if we can sell bonds, let's just say June of '25, we sell bonds, Mike believes that we can build the arena in less than 2 years. So June of '27, we would be operating. Best case scenario.
I'd like to go back to,
I get a feeling this thing.
I'd like to go back to when we were talking about sales tax a few years back.
Well,
Thomas County
and
enacted
casserole.
half-cent sales tax to pay for the Justice Center. And so what I'm curious about is how the Star Bond project would affect the collection of that half-cent sales tax on all sales within Thomas Taos County for the purpose of servicing the debt incurred to pay for the Justice Center.
No impact.
So if
If sales tax increases over the years on that, for that, 0.5%, that increase goes to Thomas County, correct?
Absolutely. Sales tax in the county right now is 1.75%. Out of that 1.75, 0.8225 goes to the city. So the county retains the other 0.9 whatever. That includes the 0.5% that you're talking about. So the base has nothing to do with it because the county sales tax is not included except for what they give to the city. So the county will not only continue to receive that, they'll receive it on all of the incremental. So at the end of the day, I appreciate you kind of setting me up for that one. At the end of the day, you're going to pay off the Justice Center sooner because there's going to be 100,000 people here spending money, which means that additional 0.5% is going to help pay off the Justice Center sooner. Thanks, Paul.
I got a question. Okay, you're gonna look at a median age group of younger people coming in. You've got a housing issue with those younger people. You've already got a significant problem with daycare across Northwest Kansas, wherever. You've got that to deal with. Is there any type of anything plans within the city or municipality with this program for a provide daycare? Because you're gonna have employees, and the biggest thing right now, when you talk to college, you talk about anybody, in all these little communities, including Colby, there is no open daycare. And so you're losing people that would be working because they can't find affordable daycare. What's the plan there?
So as developers, we don't have a plan to build a daycare center. But here's, this is the foundation of building, building the economy. It's commerce. If there's a need for additional daycare, and that actually increases with this project or with the hospital, then that's going to incentivize someone to create a new business of their own and to be able to charge a fair price for them to make a living and also provide that service. So I talked about the fact that there's not enough restaurants. We have to address that day one, right? We can't bring 1,000 people here for 4 or 5 days and have no place for them to eat. So the food court, food truck concept is to address that issue on day one. We don't have a plan to address, childcare on day one, but I firmly believe that as this progresses and as our community continues to grow and develop, and as the new hospital opens and additional hotels and other potential businesses, as the dairy increases, that there will be more childcare that'll be created because somebody, an enterprising person, is going to figure out that's a way for me to make a buck and make a living and create their own business.
It's gonna have to follow the housing. It truly is. There has been talk with several different organizations and different things on addressing that child care. Like you said, it's a pretty tough deal for independent businesses to create that. But there is some collaboration going on, that there's a possibility of more daycare, which everybody is fully aware of.
There's
All the
incentives at
things-
the state level too being issued out to help with the child care issue that we're looking into. I know Vernon with economic development is looking into those issues, and where's the incentives? It takes money to start up something from nothing. So I know Vernon's kind of working on that, and we've collaborated on some of these.
I will tell you this, the Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of Commerce, wants a project in rural Kansas, right? If you look at the majority of the Star Bond projects, the closest we get to it is Dodge City, right, or Garden City. The Lieutenant Governor wants a project in western Kansas. As we progress through this, if one of the hurdles, we know housing is a hurdle and we're working on that, but if we determine that childcare is an issue, I'm guessing that the Department of Health and Services, Department of Commerce, et cetera, will support us in the process of, here's the stuff that is available, here are the grants, here's the different things that are available to help promote that, and that's what Vernon and economic development is all about. At the end of the day, we can only build so much and operate so much. We have to have additional developers, we have to have additional businesses, and we get that. And we have to have additional people, and we have to pay a fair wage, a wage that people can live on, right? That's our objective. And we know that we'll have to be competitive. And if that impacts pricing, well then so be it. That's what America's all about, right? You gotta charge what you gotta charge to be able to pay for your overhead, to pay for your cost of goods, and to pay for your labor, right? That's America. So that's what we'll have to do. But it won't happen if we don't get started on the housing now. And it won't happen if we don't have the idea of utilizing existing tools that 99% of it, I understand the CID, but 99% of it is funded by the transient guest. What else?
So if the STAR bonds are getting paid off by the extra sales tax, who's on the hook for it if it does go belly up?
Bondholder, the purchaser of the bonds. There is no ties. The developers don't have a tie or risk. The city doesn't have a tie or risk. The state doesn't have a tie or risk. At the end of 20 years, the bonds are retired or they're completed, right? They're done. So these bonds aren't cheap, right? And it's mind-boggling the process to sell these bonds and the interest rates and the present-day value concept that they utilize. It's not like going out and buying a house at 6% for 30 years. And you can amortize that and know exactly what you're going to pay in interest over 30 years. That's not how this works. In order to get 40 million, we got to prove that we're going to be able to generate about 120 million in incremental sales tax over 20 years just to be able to service those bonds. We have to show that to the bondholders. So at the end of the day, the risk is on the purchaser. It's a high risk and it's also a high yield. But if you look at the history of the STAR bonds, there's a half a dozen projects that were paid off in 7 or 8 years. Well, that's like a bonanza. The bondholders get their money. They don't get 20 years worth of interest, but they get their money back and they get 7 years of interest, and it's a better investment than most. But ultimately then, those tax dollars that have been used to pay off the bond now go into the city, into the county, and the state.
Yeah, there's no risk, city, county, or state, upon, say if this deal fails. Don't think it will, but if it fails, it doesn't fall back on city, county, or state.
What's Schlitterbahn? Is that did I pronounce it right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Schlitterbahn, they closed it, right? Sad situation. That was a STAR bond project. But that project is still slated to be paid off in 20 years. Even though the attraction is not there, the stuff that was built around it is still generating sales tax, and they're forecasting that those bonds will be paid off in 20 years, even without that attraction. So there's been conversations about how successful STAR bonds are, and there was a study done in 2021, and we won't get into it specifically, but it's how you judge whether it was successful. Part of the idea is to bring people from more than 100 miles away. Part of the idea is to bring people from out of state. So if you simply judge the existing STAR bond projects by did everybody come from more than 100 miles away or did everybody come from out of state, they're probably not as successful as the state would have wished. But they're still going to pay off the bonds. So ultimately, through this process, we firmly believe our project is going to bring more people from within 100 miles and from out of state because that's the type of venue it is, and look at where we're at, right? But ultimately, we'll judge the success of this project by how quickly the bonds are paid off and how quickly Linda's Pizza Shop is doing 15, 20, 25%, each week increases in sales because of the increased guest count. That's how we're gonna judge the success.
Another thing on the star bonds that we got a lot of information from the state on is there's numerous counties. I know 3 right now. There's 3 counties that are on their second and third round of star bonds. They paid them off soon. They developed something else and they started. So they've been really successful with some of these. Now there was a couple of deals that were a boondoggle what they like that they did. I mean, even like you said, that Slur bomb, that was because of that accident. It was kind of why it shut down and they had all kinds of safety violations and so on and so forth. But all in all, the star bond concept is a gift from the state because 85% of this, some of this is bed tax, some of it's incremental taxes, but 85% of this project gets paid for by state sales tax that we do get no money at all off of. So 85% of this project is a gift from the state, and they want to get a project in western Kansas. And they gotta get somebody to bring it to them, and either municipality, county, or developer. And, everybody in here knows what we do, so we're on that deal. And the real answer is, they're hard to pay off. The bonds, they have to have bonds, or you can't pay them off, because it's like a swimming pool or anything else. They don't generate a lot, but the incremental is incredible. So, I mean, we've spent 2.5 years on all this stuff, looked at all of them, we've looked at everything, and we want to minimize, it is minimized, what it could potentially cost the city or county. It's on the bond portion of it, essentially zero. There's no recourse back to the city or county, and even, like you said, even the state, because their revenue sources to pay the bonds off are coming strictly from the incremental tax that their agreement with the state is. So the state is giving up their, how much is it,
5.85.
which we're not getting any of. So the 5.85 is coming right straight out of state coffers to help pay for it. So it's really, the state come out, and like Jim said, they couldn't emphasize it as much as they've got one in the second one in Garden City, got one in Dodge City. Nothing out here at all. And the lieutenant governor, which is also the Department of Commerce head, said they want to get something in our quadrant, in the northwest quadrant. And so far, we developed it. They're excited about it, and so are we.
What else?
If I understand correctly, if an area adjacent to a star bond district is developed, that area is automatically rolled into the star bond district? So if the area to the west of the arena or the south of the arena was developed, isn't that automatically rolled into the star bond district?
My understanding is not that it's automatic, it can be incorporated into the district. The district boundaries can change, but I know nothing about anything happen automatically. Now, having said that, if something was built to the west or something was built to the south, we probably would want it to be included because it would mean that the bonds are going to be paid off quicker. As developers, it doesn't benefit us that the bonds get paid off quicker, right? Doesn't benefit us. But we're not just developers, we're residents of Thomas County of Colby, right? So we want to be able to improve city and county services, and the way to do that is to build the tax base, right? Remember that there's only 3 things you can do. As costs increase, you either cut services, you raise taxes, or you build the tax base. There's no other option. So we're trying to create a way to build the tax base and establish an opportunity for Colby and Thomas County and Northwest Kansas to position itself for the next 20 plus years. Questions? Any other questions?
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Get some food.